So hello everyone to another IAPC&M MasterClass. I'm your masterclass host, Elena Nedeva. Please note that this session is recorded and live streamed. So please keep yourselves on mute to help us ensure the quality of the recording. Thank you for that. If you're keen to fill in your CPD logs, I will include a link in the chat box, so please feel free to use that. Today, actually, in the hot seat, we have Ashley Gordon. He will deliver a masterclass on the topic of NLP for trauma-informed coaching, from PTSD to powerful transformation. Since 2011, Ashley has been focused on mentoring, coaching, and training people from a wide range of different backgrounds. Ashley specializes in personal and professional development, communications, in the workplace, and neuro-linguistic coaching trainings. Ash also spent 5 years as a lead instructor for a personal development company, in which one of his roles was to provide mentoring to support sick military veterans, to support them into becoming volunteers for the organization. Ashley used his experience as a former injured veteran himself, alongside some training in military mental health first aid, to support dozens of veterans through PTSD. Post his experience, he set up his own NLP, Line Therapy, coaching, and hypnotherapy training business. So without further ado, I'm delighted to pass the microphone to Ashley. Ashley, thank you very much in advance. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alina. That was a lovely introduction. Appreciate that. And thank you everyone who has turned up for this. It's nice to see we've got a room, well, a virtual room full of people. I'm much more accustomed to it face-to-face, so I'll probably keep trying to ask you questions, but I understand the limitations on being muted, and we're in the setting. So please excuse me if I try and get you to talk. Yeah, I'm going to, today I'm seeing this as a relaxed introduction to myself, and the purpose of that is I wanted to share my story with you, and the best place to start really, and actually I hope you've all had a good day, because on the way to on my little dog walk before I come onto this, I actually dropped my phone. And it ended up in the river. So I've been waist deep in the river about 15 minutes ago. So, but don't worry, the phone's okay, the dog's okay, everything's all right. I'm dry now. So I hope your day's been sort of better than mine, but it did make me laugh, to put a smile on my face. I'm sure you've got a little button that you can sort of put hands up, and I should be able to see. Are there any NLP practitioners in the room? If anyone can sort of give me a hands up, or you could just put your hand up. Yeah, fine. There's a couple there, I think. Any timeline therapy practitioners at all? One there. Okay, yeah, brilliant. Okay, nice. So it's always good to know, see who I'm working with. As Alina said, I am a trainer of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy. I'm also the master distributor for Noble Manhattan Coaching in the UK. Has anyone heard of Noble Manhattan Coaching? Yeah, a couple of hands up. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So I came into this role sort of out of necessity. So to give you a little bit of an introduction about myself, it kind of got interesting when I was about 17 and I joined the army. I joined the army, joined the infantry, and done my training. 5 days after my 18th birthday, I was deployed to Iraq. So I spent roughly the next year on operational tours of Iraq. And I'm not going to go into detail. I'm not going to, there's enough information out there. People know what happened. But yeah, I did experience quite a lot of trauma at a very young age. We were sort of constantly, mortared and rocket attacks. Friends died in firefights. The odd sniper and roadside bomb. So the list goes on. But it's not a there's a lot of people and a lot of veterans that I've served with who unfortunately, have not been able to overcome what's happened and what they've experienced. And it makes sense, going through something at such a young age and your formative years. Trauma comes in all shapes and sizes. You might have heard of big T's, little T's. But essentially, trauma is trauma. So if people experience something that is either a life-threatening or a highly stressful experience, then in a lot of cases there is after effect. And for me, when I returned back, I was still just 18, just turning 19. The sort of young, probably happy-go-lucky lad that went out to war didn't come back the same way. For me, nobody told me that the fight was over. So in my head, I was an infantry soldier. I was trained, highly trained to 95% of my job was fighting. And for me, that stuck with me. So when I came back, I didn't understand it. I started to drink. I started to do all the things to try and sort of cope with how I was feeling. And fortunately, I think that we've come a long way in understanding the effect of post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, things like that. We've still got a long way to go, but I think it's we can talk about it now. Back when this was 2007, 2008. It wasn't in the military. It was not spoken about, and there was a lot of stigma. People thought you was weak if you was to share that you felt sad or angry or whatever about a situation. So anyway, I ended up getting out of the army in 2008. So I was 20 years of age, and I found myself lost, really. I was out of what I'd loved doing. I was out of what I thought the only thing that I ever wanted to do and that I ever could do. And I found myself just sort of spiraling, completely out of control. Until one day. One day, I was referred to a weekend seminar, and I walked in, and it was probably about 40, 50 people in the room, mostly veterans, military veterans. And there was a guy at the front, and he started to talk about your unconscious mind, your emotions and your feelings, and how you have a timeline and you can go back across your timeline and let this stuff go. And you could imagine in the room there was a high level of skepticism. But it's testament to knowing how to build rapport with a group. Nobody got up and walked out. Yeah, out of sort of 40, 50 veterans, everybody sat there. And for me, I don't know if it was because it was quite a nice venue and, the food and the food was free and it was kind of good company, or it was how they presented what they were talking about. But I thought, you know what, I'm just going to humor you. Yeah. So you tell me to imagine something in my mind. You tell me to sort of go across my timeline. You tell me about letting go of negative emotions, and I'll just do it. I'll just do it in my imagination, and I'll pretend. I'll pretend to do it. Anyway, spent the weekend there. No real sort of eureka moment. Which sometimes you look for. It's like, eureka, that's happened, that's gone. I'm relieved. I can live my life differently. But I left that weekend and I went back to my life. And it wasn't till probably a couple of days later when I think I was out with some friends and somebody maybe said something that was maybe a little bit offensive. And I remember the people around me kind of just like stood back and they were just expecting me to just explode and react. And, because I was always that person that was like, I'll defend, I'll fight through, I'll stick up for people. But I did it in the wrong way. And actually, I felt like I should have reacted like that, but the charge was gone. That rush of, aggression and anger just wasn't there. So I thought, wow, this is the first thing, first thing in a couple of years of different therapies, different counseling sessions, group support. I spent 6 weeks in a residential, not a hospital, but a residential treatment centre, specifically designed for veterans. But this thing that they were talking about at this weekend was the first thing that shifted the emotion. And for me, the emotions is what really crippled me. Yeah. Some people talk about emotional baggage. Well, I think I had like cargo. I was dragging a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of fear, a lot of hurt, and a lot of guilt around me. So the technique I'm actually talking about was, we've mentioned one of them, NLP. There's also timeline therapy, we mentioned that, and also hypnotherapy. So those three things were the first, my first experience of being able to free myself from all that sort of turmoil, the emotions. Now, not the memories. The memories are just memories. It's the emotions that are attached to the memories that can cause problems in the present, and you probably can relate to that. So as soon as I found these techniques, I thought, right, great, I'm going to learn as much as I can. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to train myself up. And so I went on a bit of a journey. So I called up the first number I could find about doing a practitioner training, got the price, couldn't afford it, but I knew, this was something that would help me, and have you ever really just wanted something, it's the right thing for you to do? There's a couple of nodding heads. And I just set out on that journey. So I got extra work. I broke concrete floors for my friends, for their businesses after I'd done my day's work, just to make that money. And before I'd even sort of finished the practitioner training, I was like, sign me up for the master practitioner. This is the more I was doing it, the more my self-esteem rose. I was changing myself as a person, and I could actually help other people. And there's a saying that sort of stuck with me, through helping other people, you can help yourself. So, and I'm not sure if that sort of affiliates with you or resonates with you, but that's what I've made my life's mission now for the last 15 years plus. I've put myself in jobs and positions where I can help somebody and make a difference. And for me, it's a bit selfish really, because it makes me feel really good. And the great thing about personal and professional development is if you're helping other people get what they want, then you should be able to have what you want. So you've got to go down and walk your own talk, walk your own principles, set goals and make them come true. So from that point, I got to master practitioner, and again, I was like, right, I want more. So I ended up going over to Vegas. It sounds glamorous, but I did a lot of work over there to do my trainer's training. Did actually have a birthday over there, so I did have a bit of fun as well as the sort of comprehensive trainings. The reason I went to the States is there was a guy called Tad James, who unfortunately is no longer with us. But Tad James actually is the creator of timeline therapy. So when we look at NLP and coaching, now NLP is absolutely brilliant for understanding how people work, for understanding how you work as a person as well, how to build rapport, how to understand the non-verbal and the unconscious communication. So when you're coaching somebody to a point and using NLP, it's brilliant. But what can happen is, like me, if somebody's got, or somebody like I used to have what we call major negative emotions, such as anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt. They have fractionated parts. They have sort of their words and their actions are not aligned. They have sort of deep-rooted conflicts, inner conflicts. Now, coaching and NLP sometimes is just not enough to be able to solve that. So Tad, about 30 years ago, started experimenting with something that's now called timeline therapy. And for me, I thought, well, there's no one better to go to than the person that sort of coined it and created it and spent pretty much a lifetime developing it. Timeline therapy, the easiest way of explaining timeline therapy has, and you can give me some participation. Has anyone ever been really angry about something? Anyone give me some? Yeah. No, some people know. Okay. What about sad? Has anyone ever been really sad about something? Yeah, there's a couple of nods. Yeah. And hands up. Thank you. What about guilty? Has anyone ever felt really guilty about doing something? Could have been something little, could have been something big. Yeah. Okay. So, and hopefully that's past. Yeah. Hopefully one day you woke up and the anger just didn't feel the same. It's gone. Yeah. Maybe he was a little bit annoyed, but it wasn't like really angry, or sad. Maybe, you could think somebody's passed away and it was very sad, but then maybe some time down the line, that you sort of wake up and it's not as bad. You've sort of resolved it in your mind. You're focusing on something different. It's not as sort of crippling as it once was. Yeah. Now that's called the natural healing process. Just as like, if you cut yourself, and you look, 6 weeks later, you probably expect to see some sort of scab or a scar. What about if you broke a bone? A few weeks down the line, it's going to start to set. But what about that thing that really hurt your feelings and you're still holding on to it 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years
Well,
later?
is the chicken left or the AWOL?
I thought that was a question. No. Yeah. So does that make sense? So years later, you've still got the things that make you sad, make you angry, make you scared, yeah, make you hurt. Now that I believe that is when the natural healing process has not been successful. It's not worked. And Tim over there is a GP, will tell you more about healing than me. However, for some reason, if your body is not healing something, your psychologically, your psychology is not healing something, yeah, there's a reason. And that's where timeline therapy comes in. So what we can actually do is we can go back from a safe perspective using our imagination, which is everything we do. Every time we set a goal, I'm sure there's some coaches in the room, you're using your imagination to set goals because you're thinking about something that hasn't happened yet. We're going to go back from a safe perspective, and we're going to reevaluate the situation. Now, we only use timeline therapy for things that are done, that are completed. So, for example, if somebody's kind of gone through a messy divorce and it's, a month or two down the line, it's not done. Yeah, it's not completed. Yeah. If, for example, somebody was kind of very sad about something that happened years ago, and there's nothing else that needs to happen. The situation's finished. All that's there is the way they feel about it and when they think about it. Now, that's not helping somebody. That's not serving somebody. So what we can do is we can go back from a safe perspective, we can reevaluate it, and we can learn something from it. And that's what we believe on the traumas leave behind, which is any negative emotions to keep telling you to come back. So I was involved in a firefight in Basra, and when I started to learn timeline therapy, I thought that guilt was never a problem for me. Yeah, I'd never had a problem with guilt, and my languaging was interesting. And even after I started to learn it a couple of years in, I never really sort of thought guilt was worth letting go because it is not really a problem for me. And it was only when I got myself into a really good position, I was in a good job, I was quite safe, my mental health was good. And when I was doing timeline therapy, I had an experience of letting go of guilt. And it took me back to a time when I was in this firefight, and I thought, well, I'd done everything right, why would I be guilty, etc., etc. And this is why we say, be careful, because things that you think may not bother somebody, and people language this. So if you're supporting other people and they're talking about experiences they've been through, we need to understand the root of language. That's why learning NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, really helps you to go back down underneath that surface level, and start to sort of unpick. Because for years and years, I built up this nice little cocoon to hold this emotion of guilt. And it was only when I got to a safe enough time in my life that my unconscious mind, would trust me to go back and to be able to review it from a safe perspective, and let it go. And hand on heart, I can say every time I do a timeline therapy intervention, the negative emotions disappear. And I've got timeline therapists in the room would agree with me on that. And I've got 30 years worth of experience through what Tad James has done and the sort of legacy that is left behind. So when we look at coaching therapy, coaching is very much forward focus. Let's create something new, let's achieve something, let's get through a problem. Now, therapy is about facing on the past, clearing up the past, maybe clearing up the present as well for maybe things that are going on. So what I believe is actually, if you just only working with one direction, if we're only focusing on the future, we might be able to help somebody a little bit and we can coach them forward. But what you may find is you coach them sort of 2 steps forward and maybe 1 step back, or even 2 steps back. So what we do with NLP, timeline therapy, hypnotherapy is we go in and we get it all out on the table. So we work with a willing participant who wants to make changes, who's willing to give up their old way of thinking and being in order to create something new, which is probably more positive for them. And that is something that they really desire. The way we do that is we clear out the past. So we highlight using our NLP techniques. So we ask a lot of questions to be able to, kind of like the onion, we take the layers away. And this will kind of this will always bring up negative emotions, limiting decisions, limiting decisions about your life. I'm not good enough. I deserve to feel bad. I can't have a fulfilling career. And this is stuff we hear all the time. They're actually driven by emotions. They're driven by those incidents in their lives. Now, that could be a traumatic incident, or it could just be something that was a sort of stressful situation, or a really impactful time in their life, where maybe it was when they were young. And how many kids or adults now that were told when they were kids that they couldn't do something, and they had to think a certain way, they had to support a certain team, they had to live their life a certain way, and that's installation. And wouldn't it be great to be able to work with those people that have, and that's usually the most common thing people say to me is, I didn't need to carry that for 30 years, or I didn't need to carry that for 15 years or 20 years. I didn't need to think that way. It was actually something that happened in their life which had caused them to take on that belief and to think that way. So once we've cleared out the past, we've got somebody to a solid foundation, a strong foundation, where now we can start like you wouldn't put the first floor in before the ground floor. We'd start to build nice layers of that person then. So we're going to start going, what goals, in your personal life, in your professional life, in your family, in your career, your spirituality, a well-rounded structure, so that someone can move forward and live a different way. Because this is the sort of thing that a lot of people don't focus on, is if somebody's maybe had a problem for 20 years, and they've always kind of carried maybe a negative emotion or a limiting decision, if you take that away, what else are they going to do with their time? Is that, and if you don't put something positive in there, then potentially they can kind of go back to doing the kind of old ways and focusing on what they don't want. Once we've done any kind of intervention and we're happy that we've got to the end and our clients are clear of negative emotions, limit decisions, have a really strong foundation to then build their goals on and go out there and start to achieve new things, we remind them of what's required to keep change the way we've just done it. So it's almost like the upkeep. And the upkeep essentially is focus only on what you want. Because what do you think will happen if you focus on what you don't want? You feel it, you get it, yeah. You get what you focus on. It's an old cliche, but it's true. And even if you don't get it, you still feel like you've got it. Yeah. So it makes sense to focus only on what you want, because your evaluations become suggestions to your unconscious mind. They essentially kind of tell you that you want something you don't. With it, we tell them that you need to take action. Yeah, you must take action and stay at cause. So I know we can't kind of go into the whole training, but cause and effect is a massive principle that we work on. So being able to, the simple principle that actually, we can be at the effect of a cause, of a certain cause. Now, the only way to solve that is to get at cause, which usually means taking action, enforcing your boundaries, and also the biggest one that I've experienced with boundaries is the people around them. Now you can make a lot of change in a short period of time. People often say, Ash, I've had this for so many years. Will it take me years to get rid of it? And I usually say no. It won't take you years to get rid of all that anger, all the sadness, all the fear, all the hurt, all the guilt, because you're done with it. You've had it for long enough. Yeah, and that's why they're sat in front of me. That's why we're working together. But when you go home, other people don't always think you've changed. And sometimes you go back to work and people don't think you've changed. So your environment is a massive factor, as I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, a massive factor of how you think, how you feel, how you behave. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. So I work very heavily on coming up with strategies to make sure that person can keep a strong foundation, keep focusing on what they want, rise above the sort of the noise and the distractions from potentially other people or other environments, and just being able to sort of move forward. So in a nutshell, and I could probably talk for ages. How are we doing for time, Alina? Are we okay?
Yes, we are. We have another 15 minutes for you to.
Lovely. So what I want to do is I don't want to wait another 50. I want to open up to the floor quickly, if that's okay. Are there any questions so far, or does anyone agree, disagree, anything that of what I've just said, or are you looking for more information on anything at this stage? No?
Please feel free to unmute yourselves or type your questions in the chat box.
No?
Ashley, can I ask?
Yeah. Sure, sir.
Yeah, so I mean, I noticed you said in the timeline therapy, so that going back from a place of safety, and I suppose I imagine that might take different lengths of time for different people to kind of get that. But how do you go about that? Maybe quite quickly, how do you get people to kind of feel in that safe place so it's okay to go back, I suppose?
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good question. So, what I give to my students and what I use for myself is something called a breakthrough process. And part of that process is what we call a detailed history. So we actually spend maybe 2 or 3 hours asking detailed questions, coaching questions and NLP questions, in order to get that person to sort of work backwards. Now, at first, you ask the questions, and potentially they don't go that far back. They just sort of tell you the surface level. That's why we need a good length of time to be able to ask those questions, to unravel them, to to do it at a kind of a good pace. But the most important part of that question is rapport. And I always say this to students, your clients will not be your clients unless you're in rapport. When you're in rapport with somebody, do you all know what I mean by rapport? Has everyone got that? Now, you've got normal rapport. Surface level rapport is, we grew up in the same town, you like the same football club, something like that. Yeah. Now, from an NLP perspective, rapport is a whole different ball game, to use a saying. We go at the unconscious level. So from the principle of when people are like each other, they like each other. Yeah. So when they are alike. And we do that for a process of matching and mirroring. We actually understand somebody's learning style. So very quickly, we can decide if they're a highly visual person, a highly auditory person, and we can actually change our terminology. And people say this to you, right? They'll say, do you see what I mean? Yeah, which is obviously visual. Or does that sound right? Which is auditory. Or, does that make sense to you? Does that feel right to you? Kinesthetic. Yeah. And rapport is so important. So part of my own coaching that I deliver, I coach kids that are in care. So very niche clientele. So they're kids that are in social care. They are in the last year of school, and they're in danger of becoming what's called NEET, so not in employment, educational training. So they're potentially going to finish school in September and fall off, in August time, July, August time, and fall off the map. And these guys, they've been exploitation of gangs, they've, drugs, they've had a lot of traumas through just being in care. They've missed massive amounts of school. And when I go to see them, it's like just another professional that's going to sit there and talk at me. Yeah, and probably let me down. So straight away, there's a barrier. And this is not bigging myself up. This is just bigging NLP up and the principles. Very quickly, I can walk straight in, build a high level of rapport with that child so that they drop the barriers and they actually start engaging and working with me so that I can then coach them towards a positive future. Tim, I know that's a long answer. Does that answer your question? Perfect.
We have two questions in the chat box. Luciana is asking, could you give us some examples of NLP questions?
Okay. Examples of NLP questions. Okay, so it's going to sound obvious, but when people have a problem and they tell somebody they've got a problem and they talk about the problem, usually the other person talks to them about the problem. Yeah, they talk to them about the symptoms. So from an NLP perspective, a question is a question, but it's how you ask it, how you deliver it, and actually why, and understanding what the answer is going to be. So for example, the first thing I ask is, if someone's got a problem, well, what do you want instead? Now, for someone who says I've got depression, anxiety, I'm angry, I'm unemployed, whatever the problem might be, the first thing I ask is, what do you want instead? What specifically do you want instead? Because what we've got to do is build the outcome. So for me, in order for me to work with somebody, I've got to understand where they are, exactly where they are, and exactly where they want to get to. What can happen is, and I say this with respect and love to every modality that helps somebody or attempts to help somebody, but there are some forms of outcomeless therapy or outcomeless coaching that don't necessarily have a destination. And from my perspective, it's very important to ask them where they are, ask them where they want to get to. And then I can ask them all sorts of things. What would happen if you did get that? And they'll tell me what would happen if they did. Then I might say, well, what would happen if you didn't get that? And then they would tell me that. So I get two sides of the equation. I could say something like, what wouldn't happen if you could not have done that? Now, I know that doesn't really make sense, but when you ask somebody in that process with rapport, they'll give you an answer. And what that does is it distracts the conscious mind, because there's a saying in NLP, the conscious mind is the goal setter. So we need the conscious mind to tell us, what the goals are. But our unconscious mind is the goal getter. And very similar, when we have problems, we think that the unconscious actually knows the solution, and the conscious sometimes gets in conflict. Yeah. And your patients and your clients actually become that, because they're so out of rapport with their unconscious mind that they're ignoring the messages, they're ignoring the suggestions. Is that okay, Alina? Or sorry, who was that? Who asked the question?
That was Luciana.
Luciana, yeah. Feel free to type if you want some more, or is that okay?
We don't have an answer from her yet, but I trust she will reply. There is a comment from Colette, which I will read out loud. Sorry, limited visual audio. I do understand and hear you, Ashley, but it's not easy to let go of stuff, things that have defined a person for a long time.
Mm-hmm. The comment, yeah, okay.
That's a comment from Colette.
Yeah.
And we have another question, which is from Oli Wirazuela. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing this quite right. Could you tell us a bit more on timeline approach?
Sure. I think I'll answer both of those, if that's okay. I mean, I know that was a comment, but I think it's very a very useful comment. Now, I could have started this webinar and just said, so I'm a trainer of timeline therapy, NLP. It's about letting go of negative emotions, limit decisions, letting go of anger, sadness, fear, and guilt in order to be able to move forward and achieve something good in your life. I don't think I would have got the same reaction by doing that. Yeah. So that's why I started by talking about my own experiences, my own sort of traumas and the emotions I had to carry and experiences. Now, that's not just to be kind of advertise myself. I think if, for example, you're in a situation and you think somebody's talking from a bit of an ivory tower, I don't think you get the same level of rapport. And you don't get that sort of trust that you've been there, you've done it, you've got the t-shirt, and actually that's why I can talk with such conviction, because I know what I've let go of, and I know what I've dealt with, and I know what all the hundreds of sort of interventions that I've been involved with and trained, the people I've trained and the things I've seen and the transformations. That's what gives me the confidence. And I think it's Viktor Frankl. Has anyone heard of Viktor Frankl? Yeah. So very quickly, just to answer the second question, Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist who was in prison in World War II. He was Jewish, so that's why he was in the concentration camps. He actually lost his whole family, I believe, apart from his sister. And he survived the concentration camps. And he was faced with a dilemma that he either he felt like if I let all the traumas and all the horrendous things that I experienced and destroy me as a person, what was the point in living through it in the first place? So he had this bit of an epiphany that there must be some meaning. There was some meaning that he hung on to life. He could have easily given up and he could have gone down that route. But he realized that actually, if you can find meaning from a suffering, we can actually start to understand how we can let it go. So again, it's about building up. He had an experience, where he realized that anything could be done to him, but nobody could take away the fact that he could enjoy a sunset, or he could watch a little bird on the wire. And just for a brief moment, he could escape what he was experiencing. So he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. So when we talk about timeline therapy as a process, that's what we mean by going back and looking for answers. Now, I am offering everyone on here, and I'll invite you to a half-day introduction for timeline therapy, NLP, and hypnotherapy, because I'm not doing it a justice by trying to fit it into, you know, a 30-minute chat. But I'll invite you all to sort of attend. But the main thing I want you to take away from today is the possibility, and to start thinking, actually, you know, how great would it be to be able to free people from a lifetime of holding on to these negative emotions? And of course, it's not easy. It's not easy. The process is easy. The hardest part is when somebody realizes that enough's enough and they want to get the right support, they want to get the help. And that's why I've made my sort of life's work to continue what Tad James was doing and what people like Viktor Frankl have gone forward. And you know, they've you know, Viktor Frankl experienced things I could never imagine. And I always think, well, if they could do it, then maybe I could do it. And that was the first thing that actually made me realize that there is hope. Is there someone had a hand up?
Thank you.
Alina.
Yes, I think there was a lady, Christine. Do you still want to ask a question, please?
Thank you so much, Ash. It was really interesting. I'm struggling to understand how you, because I heard you say that it takes a little while to build rapport, but also to take somebody back into timeline therapy. And because you're talking about coaching and timeline therapy, my head is struggling to understand how do you bring those two I take it's in a coaching session, right? So coaching to me is like today, tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then how do you then, and I understand people are not coming just from today and tomorrow, they're bringing yesterday as well.
Yeah.
But what qualifies you in a coaching session to take them back? That's my little question for you.
No, perfect question, and that's I often get asked that, is, you know, what's the difference? You know, as you said quite rightly, coaching is very much about either the now or the future, so moving forward, and when we look at sort of therapy, we're looking back. What we do is actually a process. So this wouldn't be, we don't sort of go in and maybe just do an hour's worth of a session. If I've identified that somebody would benefit, so usually in a consultation, they'd probably say, in a short period of time, they'd start talking about the things that are bothering them, or the reasons why they can't move forward, the reasons why they can't achieve their goals. Then I would structure something for them to be part of, and that wouldn't be just an hour here and there. It would be something like a 10-hour breakthrough session where we spend maybe 2 days together, and we work, you know, intensively to then go back, clear out what's needed, and then get them to a point where they feel like they're fresh, they feel like they are capable and they can move forward. Then the more regular coaching style would come in order to then keep moving them forwards. Is that helping with your the sort of, to understand that, to put it into the frame?
A little. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so as I said, you know, to learn more about this, I'm happy to invite you all to an introduction so we can go more into it. But yeah, so, you know, my process that I currently work and now what I train people to work on is a consultation followed by, if obviously they want to work on this, would be a coaching cycle, an NLP coaching cycle, which includes spending 8 to 10 hours intensively at the start. Now that doesn't have to be over 2 days, could be over, you know, but we like to keep it close because otherwise people go out and have other experiences and other traumas and other problems. So we like to know what we're working with. We spend that sort of intense bit of time. Then we would coach them towards their goals. And then if other things popped up, you know, other limiting decisions popped up, or maybe other negative emotions because they've experienced something, we can then quickly go in and do a shorter session to help clear that out, to keep them on track and to keep them moving forward. So hopefully that helps to understand that. Thank you. Is there another? Sandra?
Yes, there is another hand up by Sandra.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everybody. And really, actually, thank you so much. And it was just to help reinforce Christine's thinking, I think. So I trained in executive coaching and obviously was sort of following the GROW model. But the one thing that I found that was holding people back was that lack of acknowledgement of emotion. I then pivoted my coaching to work alongside horses that help people, self-regulate and grow their awareness. So there are ways that we can incorporate acronyms, if you like. So typically within that environment, we use heal and grow, which is very much, checking in on how you're showing up, what's the emotions that you're showing, what action do you want to take out of there, and the lessons learned. So yeah, Ashley, you don't have to be a therapist to process people's emotion. It's just knowing the right questions to ask at the right time.
Yeah, definitely. And that's it. And some of the people that I go to in my life, they're painter and decorators, or whatever their sort of forte is. It's who you can talk to, who you can feel comfortable with. And so we're talking from a perspective of somebody's probably come and asking for some emotional support or some training. So that there are so much out there, and in the last sort of 15 years, I've worked in quite a lot of various projects, and some of the things that you'd never have thought could be so beneficial. Even just getting people together sometimes is so therapeutic.
I think it's brilliant though. I've seen therapists now calling themselves forward-thinking therapists or something, like solution thinking therapy, and it's like, wait a minute, that's coaching.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's my point about bringing together coaching, NLP, time and therapy, hypnotherapy, any other. It is about looking at holistically, and it's not just the future, it's not just the now, it's not just the past. There's everything we've got to take in. So people come to you and they've had experiences which made them a rounded person, or in a positive way or a negative way. And we need to take the whole into consideration. And it's a little bit like the mind-body connection. It's like, if we only solely work on the body and trying to heal the body, where does the mind come in, and vice versa? If we're just trying to heal the mind, what about the body? How can we get the body involved and work collectively and holistically? But fascinating. Sounds like you're doing some good stuff.
Well, yeah, I'm back in the workplace now, not so much with horses, but yeah, it's taught me a lot about just my approach of not being linear with trying to create change. So.
Yeah, that's it. And some of my I know some sort of NLP practitioners I train with who kind of into question therapy and things like that. They've used all sorts. But I think anything that helps people, great. We need more of it. And then the world's only going, unfortunately, it seems like there's more and more stuff that's happening. So more practitioners and more people who are there to help. Great.
Thank you, Ashley. Bridget is asking the following. It will be helpful for you to do a demo of coaching using NLP. Are you able to do that?
A demo?
Yes.
Well, probably not ethical, really. No, not in this setting. But like I said, if you want to come to an introduction, yeah, because that would be people who come in, they're there to sort of engage and to work, and they may have issues or things to discuss. So I think that would probably be the best place for sort of demonstrations and explanations.
Thanks, Ashley. So how are you going to share information about that with us, please?
Okay, so we haven't quite got a date, so we're putting something out in the next couple of days. So what I did prepare was I've got a link that you can follow. So I'll just put it in. So we've got some training dates. We've got some got some training dates. We've got a link that you can follow, and also my email address. So just a couple of ways of making contact. If you do come through the link or the obviously email, just if you come through the email, just mention that you've that you were on this webinar, and if you come through the link, then I'll know that you've come through the webinar, and then I can send you relevant information, and we can just have a conversation. But I'm happy to explore anything with anybody. I'm just going to share something with you now.
Thank you.
Hopefully, so that should give people a bit of time to.
Yes, we see it.
Yeah.
Ashley, I actually have a question, if I may. How long does timeline therapy take in terms of duration of each session?
So, yeah, the timeline therapy is part of what we call an intervention. So, we don't actually do any work until we've spent probably 2 or 3 hours asking questions, because we want to make sure it's ethical, it's safe. We're working on the problem. You know, a little bit like, you know, what I said earlier, you know, if you have symptoms, we don't want to work on the symptoms. Symptoms are not the problem. You know, the problem has a root cause. There's something that's causing the issue. Now that takes more than just, you know, 20 minutes or half an hour chat to try and get right down to the deep structure. So we spend a few hours doing asking questions. Then we move into the actual therapy stage. So timeline therapy is a very quick process which releases the negative emotions every single time, and we test it straight afterwards. So we'll go in and do a general sweep of, you know, all the anger, all the sadness, all the fear, all the hurt, all the guilt, because you've just spent several hours talking about it and asking questions, loosening up the model of the world, loosening up that sort of grip. And you got to remember, these people are motivated. You know, I haven't dragged them off the streets making them do it. We're not the emotion police. You know, they're paying me a decent amount of money. They want to do it. They've done some tasking. They're a high probability client, which means that they're really willing to make these changes, and they're willing to work with you. Then we do something called parts integration, which kind of gets people aligned and kind of gets away any of those inner conflicts that might cause them to, you know, people say this, right? On one hand, I want to do this with my life, or on one hand, I think I can get better, and then the other hand, you know, this is holding me back, and, you know, I feel like I'm not good enough. And they get this little, and people talk like this with their hands. That's actually like a fractionation. They have that conflict. And then by the time we've looked at setting some goals, we've looked at our next steps and planned in our next session, you probably spent maybe a couple of days with somebody to do a full intervention. Now, I said that could be spread out over a longer period of time or done maybe back to back, a couple of days back to back. The reason I like it back to back is I think people have had their problems long enough, and if they're done with it, it's go in and make some changes. But for example, if people are saying to me, well, you know, I'm not ready, or I can't get rid of it, I don't think I can let go of it. Now I respect that, you know, but it's not for me to change that. It's me to encourage them to think in a most positive way for them. But essentially, it's up to them if they want to be part of it and be part of the process and go with that. So yeah, so the timeline therapy itself, kind of very, very quick process, but there's a longer setup and a longer follow-up and taskings and things that they need to do to keep themselves in a good place. Just like anything, you know, you can get a new engine in the car, but if you don't put oil and water and, you know, service it regularly, it's probably going to go bad.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's great. We have a few more minutes until the end. Any last minute questions for Ashley?
Can I, Dave, do you fancy you say something, mate? You're on muted, I think, somehow. Oh, press it again.
That.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
As someone that's recently trained with you and now has 2 clients, which is going well, the thing about NLP really is about this idea of reprogramming people. But with both my clients, I'm into sort of session 5 now, and I'm still peeling away the layers. I'm nowhere near beginning to use the tools that NLP gives me in my toolbox. As I'm going through each session, I'm kind of noting things down, thinking, yep, that'll work for like-dislike, or it'll work for timeline therapy. But it takes just as long, probably with normal counseling or coaching, to get to a point with a client where you think, right, they trust me. They've got to a point where I can now start to remove these emotions and move them to a better place. But timeline therapy, I don't know whether Ash would agree, pretty well works 100% of the time, doesn't it? It's so powerful, but you've got to get these emotions gone, and then you will have a very different person sitting in front of you. Now you can take those steps with them to move them to where they want to be. But it doesn't mean to say session 1, you're straight into NLP techniques. That's not my experience. And what my experience is, seems to be working, is just let them talk, dig deep. As you've said, I think one of the most powerful phrases that you've come up with is that the problem that they come to you with is not the problem. You know, it never is. You've got to go deep, and then you have all these wonderful things that you can offer them. But my other thought is that what you've got to be careful of is not having someone sit in front of you thinking that they're being processed. Do you know what I mean? With techniques. And so it needs to be organic. And what I say to them is, sit with me, start talking, we'll do this together. And I think that seems to be much more powerful than sort of me being the counselor, them being the client, and that being the dynamic. So I just wanted to say that. Yeah,
no, Dave, brilliant, and you're an amazing practitioner. It's great having you on the trainings, and I know you're coming on more, so that's good. So yeah, and you're perfectly right. That coaching, so essentially you're coaching people to get to a point where they feel that they want to make the changes, and that's absolutely, and that's brilliant, and that's part of the, you know, because so you've actually done NLP coaching, you've certified in NLP.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah, so no, that's absolutely brilliant approach, and I always say to people, look, this is how I work. You can follow that process, which we've, you know, that way, or the breakthrough way, or whatever. And as long as you're happy and it's working and the clients are getting results, brilliant. You know, that's what we want. Yeah, no, really, really good. So well done, Dave. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks. Cheers.
Yeah. Well, I think we're about time.
Yes, we're about time.
Go on, sorry.
I'll wrap up the session if you allow me to. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this IAPC&M Masterclass. Thank you, Ashley, for being with us here. For all participants who receive a copy of this recording via email, if you have any subsequent questions or comments, please feel free to connect with Ashley directly. I hope everybody has a wonderful day ahead. Thank you, and please take care.